Have you ever felt just completely paralyzed by an impossible situation? You know the feeling. Whether you're a teenager drowning in academic pressure, an adult navigating a really toxic workplace, or just someone struggling with everyday anxiety, we all face these moments where the pressure just mounts. The options vanish, and you feel entirely trapped by circumstances you literally cannot control. If you've ever felt that way, trust me, you are not alone.
Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving into a text that a lot of people write off as a purely religious scripture, but honestly, it actually serves as a highly relevant, deeply practical psychological manual for our modern emotional battles. We are exploring the very first chapter of the 5,000-year-old Bhagavad Gita to uncover its timeless framework for mind management. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, the universal inner conflict. Then, Arjuna's ancient panic attack, followed by the trap of attachment, timeless mind management, and finally, healing for modern life. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get right into it. Section 1. The universal inner conflict. Ancient battlefields in modern struggles. Okay, let's dive into this, because the setting of our ancient story perfectly reflects the reality of our current lives. Understanding this setup is the absolute key to unlocking everything else. Picture the ancient battlefield of Kurukshetra, the physical setting where these massive armies gathered for a literal physical war. Now I want you to compare that to our modern battlefields. I mean, we fight our own daily wars, right? From middle school peer pressure and crazy exam stress to family disputes and sheer career burnout. The external scenery has changed, for sure, but that internal human chaos, that hasn't changed a bit. So, the Bhagavad Gita packs exactly 700 verses across 18 chapters. It is a massive, truly profound philosophical journey. But, and this is absolutely crucial, before we hit any of that soaring spiritual wisdom and cosmic truth, this entire epic starts with something incredibly raw and vulnerable. It starts with a very human emotional breakdown. Section 2. Arjuna's ancient panic attack, a warrior's collapse. And that brings us to Arjuna. He's the central figure of this text, essentially the greatest warrior of his entire era. But what we witness in this first chapter isn't some display of macho bravery, and it's definitely not cowardice either. What we're actually seeing is an ancient, highly documented panic attack. Now, what's really interesting here is how verse 1.30 perfectly captures the acute physical reality of severe anxiety. Arjuna is standing right between these two massive armies, and his body just entirely shuts down. He says his bow, the Gandiva, is slipping from his hands. His skin is literally burning. He can't even stand up, and his mind is just spinning out of control. Just look at these symptoms drawn straight from the text. He's seeing these terrible omens, completely losing his enthusiasm, experiencing extreme physical weakness, and profound mental confusion. Look, if Arjuna, who was basically the ultimate pinnacle of leadership and strength in his time, if he suffered these intense, crushing symptoms of anxiety, well, that really normalizes our own vulnerabilities. Whether you're a CEO or a college freshman, feeling overwhelmed isn't a sign of weakness. It's just a very natural part of the human condition when you're faced with an impossible burden. Section 3. The trap of attachment, the root of the breakdown. So, what actually triggered this massive collapse in the mind of a seasoned general? To answer that, we have to shift our focus to the psychological trigger of this panic attack and really explore the mechanics of why our minds fall into chaos.
It all comes down to one really powerful Sanskrit word, svajjanam. This translates to one's own people, or loved ones. See, Arjuna wasn't afraid of dying. Not at all. His collapse happened the exact second he looked across that battlefield and saw his teachers, his grandfathers, his uncles, and his cousins. He's falling apart because he's looking at his loved ones, and it triggers this overwhelming, blinding wave of emotional attachment and misplaced compassion. It's a fascinating contrast when you look at how attachment just completely ruins our judgment. On one hand, you've got the literal blind king Dhritarashtra, right? His attachment is totally selfish. It's just pure greed to win the kingdom for his own sons at any cost. But on the other hand, we have Arjuna, who is suffering from blinding compassion. He is so overwhelmed by empathy that he literally cannot perform his righteous duty. Both of these, selfish greed and unmanaged, hyper-emotional empathy, equally cloud our spiritual wisdom and wreck our decision-making. So the crucial point is that our inner conflict fundamentally stems from this illusion of me and mine.
Modern psychologists who analyze the Gita point out that when we interact purely from a standpoint of my desires, my attachments, my people, conflict is pretty much guaranteed. That kind of narrow focus ties us to outcomes we literally cannot control, and that is exactly what creates the anxiety and depression that paralyze us.
Section 4. Timeless Mind Management. The Science of the Mind. Once the Gita establishes the core problem of the undisciplined, attached mind in Chapter 1, it immediately pivots to the solution. It reframes the rest of the text not just as a spiritual discourse, but as a timeless, preventative science for emotional regulation and cognitive flexibility.
Psychologists and theologians today actually look at the Gita as a highly systematic training manual. The end goal isn't just to, feel a little bit better. It's about achieving what modern psychology calls a flow state. It's this super empowering, optimistic approach to training an undisciplined mind. It teaches you how to function optimally and step back to observe your thoughts mindfully, without getting completely swept away by the storm of your own emotions.
The sources give us this absolutely brilliant 4-step psychological framework pulled straight from the text. Step 1 is tune. Connect your mind to a higher purpose so you aren't just running on your own limited strength. Step 2 is train, focusing the mind through relentless practice. Step 3 is transform, shifting your focus away from trying to fix the external world and fixing your internal self instead. And finally, step 4 is transcend, going beyond the mind's normal limitations right into that highly focused flow state. This is literally the ultimate preventative mental health tool.
And this brilliantly illustrates Sri Krishna's core advice to Arjuna, which actually gets repeated at both the beginning and the end of the text. Do not cry. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean holding back physical tears. It means refusing to complain. It means totally dropping the victim mindset. It is a direct call to accept the harsh reality of your situation, whatever it is, and take positive action, rather than constantly fighting against the way the world currently is.
Section 5. Healing for Modern Life. Applying the Ancient Science. Let's move to this final section and see how all of this builds into practical takeaways that you can immediately apply to your life today.
This elegant breakdown really demystifies the source material for us. It maps the ancient, traditional paths of yoga described in the Gita straight to the modern therapeutic concepts we use all the time now. Karma yoga, that's action and detachment, doing your duty without obsessing over the outcome. Bhakti yoga provides emotional regulation, shifting our core relationship to something higher so we don't get destroyed by everyday human letdowns. And jnana yoga gives us meaning and purpose, making our values crystal clear so we know exactly where we're headed.
Which brings us to this really profound inside-out contrast. Think about it. When we're feeling anxious, depressed, or overwhelmed, our very first instinct is to try and fix the outside world, right? We think, oh, if I could just change this person, or switch schools, or quit this job, I'd finally be happy. But the Gita teaches us that we usually cannot control the external battlefield at all. True emotional healing and real optimal functioning have to happen from within. You don't change the situation, you change yourself.
Because look, life is absolutely going to present you with your own version of Kurukshetra. You are going to face conflicts, stress, and moments where you feel completely trapped. So I'll leave you with this. When faced with your next battle, will you exhaust yourself trying to change an uncontrollable situation? Or will you use these timeless tools to change yourself?